Hello everyone and welcome back to Ian's Innovations. On April 28th, 2017, a game called Little Nightmares was released. It was developed by Tarsier Studios and published by Bandai Namco. Since then, there have been a 3-part DLC for the game called Secrets of the Maw, a 2-issue comic book series, mobile prequel game called Very Little Nightmares that was instead developed by Alike Studios for mobile devices in 2019, a second series of comics that released for mobile in early 2021, and most recently, a full-on sequel called Little Nightmares 2 that was developed once again by Tarsier Studios and was released on February 11th, 2021. You may recall that 2 years ago, I unboxed the 6th edition of the first Little Nightmares to celebrate its 2-year anniversary, and last year I showed you a playthrough of the game where I earned a Hard to the Core achievement to celebrate its 3-year anniversary. There is another piece of Little Nightmares content that was announced, but unlike all the other ones I mentioned before, this one has never been released as of this video. And what would this unreleased piece of content be exactly? Well, to celebrate Little Nightmares' 4-year anniversary, I'll be talking about the Little Nightmares TV show and how it could potentially be pulled off. Okay, since we'll be covering something that was initially announced over 4 years ago, I bet a lot of you guys watching right now have either completely forgotten about this announcement or never even heard of it. So I'll first review this TV show announcement and its history. Back on June 12th, 2017, less than 2 months after the first Little Nightmares was released, Dimitri M. Johnson and Steve Van Bonge of DJ2 Entertainment announced that Little Nightmares will be adapted into a TV show. No release date was given, but there were a few notable details in the announcement articles. For one, the show's development would heavily involve Anthony and Joe Russo, who you might know for directing a few of the movies from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Their movies include the second and third Captain America films, Avengers Infinity War, and Avengers Endgame. Secondly, it was said in the announcement that the pilot episode will be directed by Henry Selick, who you may know for directing some of the most widely loved stop-motion films like The Nightmare Before Christmas, James and the Giant Peach, and Coraline. Which, during the making of this video, I finally watched Coraline for myself, and it's as great and terrifying as everyone says it is. And yet, despite having some really talented names attached to it, nothing ever really came of Little Nightmares TV show as of July 2021. The most we have ever gotten on updates for it were messages from Tarsier Studios, and I can find at least 2 instances of this. In March 2018, the YouTuber Arcane Stag had his second interview with Tarsier Studios, where in it, he asked about news for the TV show, and all Tarsier said was that once there is news, they will deliver it. So we pretty much didn't really get any new information from that, but at least they acknowledged the show's existence. Then later in August 2018, a YouTuber going by the name The Mad God posted a video of him asking Tarsier about the TV show on Twitter, and they said it's still being worked on. And well, that's the latest update on the show's status that I was able to find. 3 years later, there hasn't been any more official updates, trailers, or any confirmation on it from Tarsier, Bandai Namco, or DJ2 Entertainment. Well, I was able to find an IMDb page for the Little Nightmares TV show, but I'd say it's very unreliable and clearly isn't official. Like, it already has a rating of 8 out of 10 despite it not being released. The page's images for the show are really just covers and images from the first game, and it states that it released in 2019 even though that never happened. As of now, we don't know if the show's either still being worked on or if it had been cancelled. So, what happened? Well, we of course aren't sure of the show's ultimate fate, so all we could do is speculate as of now. I have thought of 3 possible reasons why the Little Nightmares TV show isn't out yet. One reason could be due to how the prominent people who are involved with the show may have been too busy working with other projects after its announcement. First, let's talk about what the Russo brothers have been up to. As stated before, they directed Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, which were released in 2018 and 2019 respectively after the TV show was announced. A lot of us remember how popular they were on release and how both of them made a ton of money. So I think it's safe to say that the Russo brothers were putting in more of their priorities onto those films during the time they would have been working on the Little Nightmares TV show, and they have been involved with other projects afterwards. As for Henry Selick, he is currently working on a new stop-motion animated film called Wendell and Wild, which is currently planned to release sometime in 2021, but could get pushed to a later time. Since that project had been first announced back in 2015, I think it's certain that Selick has been placing a good amount of his priorities on it for a longer period of time than he would have for the TV show. So what I'm trying to say here is that with the Russo brothers and Henry Selick being busy with other projects over the last 4 years, it could mean that they hadn't been putting as much priority into the Little Nightmares TV show. Now, we're not sure how much tertiary studios would have been involved with the show, and if it's still happening, then it's unlikely that they would be working on it by now, since they were bought out by Embracer Group in late 2019. My second possible reason for why the show isn't out yet may be due to the lack of high demand. As a longtime Little Nightmares fan myself, I remember for its first few years from 2017 to like 2019, Little Nightmares wasn't that popular of a franchise like it is now. So because the game didn't have a big following for some time, maybe they didn't think they should make a TV show based on it, and it might have not been too successful in reaching a wide audience. And my third possible reason for the show's ultimate fate may be due to it being too ambitious for the time of its announcement. Just remember that this show was announced less than 2 months after the first game came out, which meant that by that time, it would have been too early for people to judge if it was franchise worthy. On top of that, you need to keep in mind that it's difficult for an original IP to become successful without a strong following, especially if it's from an independent, lesser known development studio like Tarsier. So for this, I think it wouldn't have really made sense to immediately begin making a franchise of an indie game early on into its life. However, what about making this TV show now? Well, that's where we get into the main part of the video, and what I think is more interesting to talk about. Right now, as of July 2021, I do believe that the idea of making a Little Nightmares TV show can actually work. With us now having 3 games, DLC, and 2 series of comics under our belt, I think we can come up with something that has a lot of potential in being a good show that will get a lot of people, both Little Nightmares fans and casual viewers, interested in watching. Okay, we have a ton of ground to cover when discussing how Little Nightmares TV show can be made, and I think the best place for us to begin going over would be the story of the TV show. I recall of its announcement and subsequent years afterwards, it was never really made clear on if Little Nightmares TV show would either just be a retelling of the first game, or if it would have its own plot. For my version, I believe it being its own new story would work better for a show. I mean, yeah, you could say that each chapter of the games can be adapted into individual episodes, but that'll just make the series short and not very unique. In my opinion, these aspects could make people less interested to check it out. By making the TV show have a unique plot, it can open up to so many new ideas for Little Nightmares and can make people more interested to see it. But what would the plot be? Well, when it comes to story, the Little Nightmares games and comics don't seem to follow a usual continuous storyline. By that, I mean, take for instance Little Nightmares 2. Despite its title, it has been confirmed to in fact be a prequel to the first game. There's also still some confusion on how exactly Six gets her yellow raincoat based on that game and the ending of Very Little Nightmares. Because of that, I don't think the TV show should have one overarching plot like so many other shows these days. And instead, I think it should feature various smaller stories that each take place within the world of Little Nightmares. Now, if this show were to be made today, then I believe it should feature most, if not all aspects of the Little Nightmares series as of now, in terms of characters, locations, etc. Maybe Season 1 could be set primarily on the mall since that was the main setting of the first game. If the show is a hit and gets renewed for more seasons, then I predict Season 2 could be primarily set within the nest from Very Little Nightmares. I think that would make sense since Very Little Nightmares was the first new game in the series to come out after the first Little Nightmares. And as you can tell how this pattern is going, Season 3 could be primarily set within the Pale City from Little Nightmares 2. Alright, with how much the first game, its DLCs, and first comic series revolve around the mall, there can be a lot of story possibilities for the first season alone. For starters, it's heavily implied that Six has been on the Maw for a long time prior to the events of the first game, so maybe there could be various episodes about her adventures and experiences that she had on the vessel. They could also have a couple episodes centered on Little Nightmares' second playable protagonist, the Runaway Kid. I speculated before in my third video of my Runaway Kid analysis series that he had also been on the Maw for a while and longed to escape it. They could also show what he had to go through while imprisoned and even reveal why he has a shackle on his right ankle. Hey, remember that group of kids around the campfire that Six ran into in the original comics? Well, we of course know that they showed the backstories of the refugee kid and humpback girl in the 2 issues, and it's likely that we would have learned the backstories of the other kids if the comics hadn't been discontinued early. I think the TV show can be a great way to be able to tell these stories and learn more about these characters. They could even have episodes told from the perspective of the antagonists of the first game, and we can learn more about them. For example, the janitor said to have originally lived in the outside world before heading to the Maw, so maybe we can have an episode exploring his past and seeing his reason in going to the vessel. They could do an episode or 2 about the twin chefs so that we can learn more about their dynamic and also find out why they wear those masks all the time. They can make a couple episodes in season 1 centered on the lady and learn more about her background and her abilities. Many fans speculate that she has some relation to the granny from the first DLC. Maybe this show can shed some light onto that and answer why the granny was abandoned in the depths of the Maw. The show could also find a way to properly incorporate the Wax Spellman as a character, since his role as an enemy unfortunately got cut from the first game and was only referenced throughout the series through secrets and Easter eggs. They could also have episodes starring the gnomes, and since they exist beyond the Maw and the world of Little Nightmares, there could be episodes about them in not just the first season, but throughout the entire show. Lastly, for season 1, they could introduce brand new characters to shake things up. For example, it's implied that other kids besides the ones that we have already seen have previously tried to escape the Maw through various means like the depths, so maybe there could be episodes about new child characters and their journeys throughout the vessel. Now we'll talk about the story possibilities for the second season of the TV show, which for my version will primarily take place within the nest from Very Little Nightmares, as stated earlier. Though unfortunately for us, trying to come up with plotlines for season 2 will not be as easy, since the nest has so far only appeared in one game and hasn't appeared in any comics like the Maw has. But I think we could come up with some good ideas of what we have to work with. First off, I think they should make multiple episodes about the main protagonist of Very Little Nightmares, the girl in the yellow raincoat. I think it could be a cool idea to learn more about the girl throughout the TV show, where they could explain her background and true motivations. I mean, why was she even flying that hot air balloon before crashing into the roof of the nest? Did she intend on getting there, or was it just an accident? Another character who could star in several episodes would be Six again. She did appear in the game as another child trapped within the nest, so maybe the show can explain why she is in the mansion. And a third character who should have multiple episodes about her is the main antagonist of Very Little Nightmares, the Pretender. With this, they could potentially address her position on if she's the one who oversees the nest and explain her background. This season can also explain what the actual purpose of the nest itself is, since a while back, fans theorized that it had ties to the Maw based on the eyeball symbol scattered all around the mansion. But with how we see this same symbol in a couple areas of the Pale City in Little Nightmares 2, maybe that theory might not really hold any water now. And well, that's the best ideas I could come up with for season 2. Like I said, there really wasn't a lot to work with from Very Little Nightmares, but like season 1, this season can also introduce new characters and have episodes about their stay in the nest, which this season may have to rely on these new characters more so it can have the same or similar amount of episodes as season 1. Now we will cover the story possibilities for the third season of the TV show, which, as I stated before, for my version it will primarily take place within the Pale City from the most recent game in the franchise, Little Nightmares 2. Since this location has already appeared beyond the second game of it being in the latest comics, as well as being a city that we're talking about, there are probably just as many possibilities for storylines for a third season of the TV show as the first season. First off, I believe this season should feature multiple episodes about the main protagonist of Little Nightmares 2, Mono. This way, we can learn more about his abilities, his past, and his connections with the Thin Man. And yeah, I know that the first and sixth episode of the second comic series did show Mono's past, but I think the TV show can do more than just that. Also, I once again think this season should have a couple of episodes centered on Six, showing us what exactly she was up to before the beginning of the second game, as well as maybe address the whole confusion on how Six gets her yellow raincoat. Hell, they could also address where Very Little Nightmares and Little Nightmares 2 are placed in the series timeline while they're at it. And like Mono, I know that for Six's previous adventures, the first episode of the second comic series does explain how she got captured by the hunter in the wilderness, which leads to her being imprisoned in his basement at the beginning of the second game. But I think the show can also expand on this. And continuing on the topic of the second comic series, it does introduce 4 new characters that each star in their respective episodes. Episode 2 features a character known as the Toddler, who makes his way through the wilderness before getting kidnapped by the Thin Man and sucked into a TV. Episode 3 features a girl with pigtails, who tries to escape from the hospital and is last seen being spotted by the doctor. Episode 4 features a fat kid, who escapes the clutches of some bullies in the school and is last seen being spotted by the teacher. Finally, episode 5 features a child character referred to as the Ghost, who is seen scavenging for food in an apartment in the Pale City and is last seen being spotted by 2 viewers. I think the TV show can be a great opportunity to expand on each of these characters by letting them star in a few of their own episodes and see more of their adventures in the world of Little Nightmares. And just like the first 2 seasons, Season 3 can introduce new characters and have episodes about their experiences in the Pale City. Another thing that Season 3 can do is further expand on the setting of the Pale City, along with its specific locations shown in Little Nightmares 2. Take the location of the school for example. Many people speculate that this place was at one point a typical school and wasn't always populated by the teacher and the bullies. But later on, something more sinister had happened there and it led to its current state of chaos. This is evident with how there are backpacks, supplies, and clothes that are just laying around the school and not being used by the bullies. Other pieces of evidence include piles of burned books, the dead lunch lady in the freezer, and how in the cafeteria section of the chapter, we could see that the bullies aren't eating any of the food and are instead just playing with it and causing a ruckus. There is also the deal with the chessboard puzzle room that includes a deceased bully, a map with a massive eye drawn on it, and how there's ominous music played when you enter the room and when you find the key needed to unlock a door. With all these details here indicating that there was more about the history of the school that we knew, maybe the TV show can properly show what had happened here and what led to how it is now. Another location that could get more focus in the show would be the hospital. Like, is it possible that more things had happened here in this place? And have we seen everything that the doctor has been up to? I don't know. But we could see these questions be addressed in an episode or 2 of the show. We could even learn more about the Pale City itself. Throughout the second game, we could see tons of evidence showing that it was once a normal, bustling city before the transmission from the signal tower had corrupted most of its citizens. Maybe the show can explain how this entire city ended up like how it is in the game, and how it affected the other characters such as the hunter, the teacher, the doctor, and the kids from the comics. There is also the deal with the flesh walls that appear in the transmission chapter at the end of the game. I don't know about you, but I've been speculating that these things play a major role in the world of Little Nightmares. I mean, why else would we see the eyeball symbol everywhere throughout the mall, the nest, and the Pale City? If this is the case, then I think it would be a really cool idea if they acted as the main antagonist throughout the entire show, secretly pulling the strings of many aspects like the characters, locations, and stories. Lastly, for Season 3, I think it would be a great opportunity to repurpose some of the cut content from Little Nightmares 2, such as the barber enemy, the TVs with an eye, the previously mentioned lunch lady who's originally going to be an enemy but only appeared as a dead corpse in the final game, and the moth, grub, and mite enemies that only appeared as secrets and Easter eggs in the final game. And now we will talk about the story possibilities for the 4th season of the TV show. As of now, I honestly don't know what exactly they could do for this season. Well, for the setting, I think they would have season 4 take place primarily in whatever the main setting of a possible 4th game might be. Or they could even make up an entirely new setting that exclusively appears in the show. 6 might very well appear again in season 4, like how she will appear in all 3 seasons in my version, and who knows what new ideas they could come up with here. Alright, I think we talked about a good amount of story possibilities for the Little Nightmares TV show, and now I think we should go over how the show will tell its stories. Now, there has been a question that I've heard a couple of people ask about the show, which is, would the characters speak? One of the most noteworthy aspects about the Little Nightmares games is that, with the exception of 6 and Mono's form of communication in Little Nightmares 2, none of the characters really have any dialogue. Instead, the games rely on visual storytelling as opposed to traditional storytelling. Though that's not to say that the entire Little Nightmares franchise doesn't feature any normal dialogue, since in the original comic book series the characters did have dialogue in their traditional comic book way. However, dialogue had been abandoned by the second comic series in favor of visual storytelling like the games. Because of this, I think the TV show would most likely go for the approach of visual storytelling with little to no dialogue. I think this will go well for most Little Nightmares fans since it's something that's familiar, and I have a feeling that making most of the characters talk might put off some casual fans. Next, let's talk about the animation of the Little Nightmares TV show, and more specifically, we will discuss what form of animation they might use. Back when it was first announced, the information about Henry Selick being involved with the show got a lot of Little Nightmares fans excited, myself included. On a visual and tone aspect, I think Selick would be perfect for Little Nightmares. I'd also like to point out that both 6 and the titular character of Coraline wear bright yellow raincoats. Also with his involvement, fans began wondering if the show would be done with stop motion animation. As mentioned previously, I watched Selick's 2009 film Coraline during the making of this video. I watched it mainly so I could get a better understanding of his stop motion skills. And well, if he can animate characters like Coraline, her parents, Wybie, the cat, Mr. Bubinski, April and Miriam, and the other mother like how they are animated in the movie, then I can totally see him animating characters like 6, the runaway kid, the girl in the yellow raincoat, Mono, the gnomes, the janitor, the twin chefs, the guests, the lady, the granny, the craftsman, the butler, the pretender, the hunter, the teacher, the doctor, the viewers, the thin man, and the flesh walls in stop motion. However, people need to keep in mind that stop motion animation and model work is a lot more expensive than computer generated animation. To put this in perspective, this is why Thomas the Tank Engine later converted from being made with live action sets and models to being animated entirely in CGI animation for the rest of the show's run until its end in 2021. It simply costed less money to produce the show digitally rather than working with live action models and sets. Because of the factor of money, the possibility of what kind of animation the Little Nightmares TV show would use really depends on what kind of budget they might have. If the show will have a really high budget, then there's a good chance that it will be animated using stop motion. But if they don't have a high budget, then it's likely they'll resort to using CGI animation like the games. As for my personal preference for what kind of animation they should use, well, if the show can still capture the tone, atmosphere, style, and aesthetic of the games, then I'll honestly be fine with whatever animation they might use. Although maybe I might lean more into wanting it be in stop motion since I'm just interested in how Little Nightmares would look like in it, but still, I'll be fine with whatever they use. And finally, we'll go over how the Little Nightmares TV show may be released. Obviously, with the rise of streaming services, it is more than likely that it may release on one. But which service exactly? Well, I did a little bit of research on if Bandai Namco is involved with producing TV shows, and I did find out that they have a production company / animation studio called Bandai Namco Pictures. However, this studio is entirely revolved around producing anime, so I highly doubt that they'd release the Little Nightmares TV show from there. I also had trouble finding out what streaming services they released their shows on, so that's not good. Next, I checked DJ2 Entertainment's lineup of shows, and I have also been having a hard time researching them and how their content is released. I mean, the Little Nightmares TV show is still on their website, so maybe we could still use them to know how the show will be released? I don't know. Unfortunately, the way the show could release is something that I haven't been able to figure out as of now. And at this point, I think the show could release on almost any service, whether it could be Netflix, or HBO Max, or Hulu, or some other service is anyone's guess. I will gladly take any help I could get on this topic, and you guys can comment down below if you know more information. So as it stands now, the Little Nightmares TV show is quite an interesting and strange topic. We don't know yet if it's either cancelled or still in development, but that doesn't stop us from speculating and using our imagination for coming up with our own ways for how it could be pulled off. As I said before, I do believe that the show was announced too early, along with how the first Little Nightmares was not too popular for around its first 3 years of release, and if there not being high demand for a TV series, I don't think making an entire show would have worked out 4 years ago. But for today in 2021, however, I believe that making a show can turn out successful, since there's so much more content to work with that's released since, and the fact that the Little Nightmares franchise is now more popular than ever with the release of Little Nightmares 2. How popular? Well, Little Nightmares 2 had managed to sell over 1 million units worldwide in less than a month after its release. I mean, yeah, it's not a groundbreaking sales number, but that's still impressive considering that the first game took over a year to sell 1 million units worldwide. And from replies from the developers to fans' questions and official polls like these, it's clear that Little Nightmares isn't over yet. Who knows, maybe the show will be made eventually, but until that may happen, we could still be happy with what we have for Little Nightmares franchise and look forward to what direction it'll head in next. Anyway, thank you for watching my video about my ideas for the Little Nightmares TV show. Be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see what I'll do next on my channel. Goodbye!